Does anyone want to join the attack team? You'll get extra money as soon as the mission is finished. Chugong looked around, hoping someone would volunteer, but no one did. Everyone looked down or up, trying not to meet his gaze. It was clear why. No one wanted to risk their life for a small reward. They wouldn't even try to help if their own life was in danger. The strongest hunter on the team was ranked C. Almost all of the players were very new and not very strong, with many at the lowest level, but Chugong wanted to bring one of them to a very difficult and dangerous dungeon meant for experienced players. They might hesitate to even try a moderately hard dungeon, so asking them to go to a really tough one seemed like a lot. If a magical creature even touched them, it would be deadly. Even stepping in the wrong spot meant certain death. This dungeon was too dangerous for beginner adventurers. Carrying equipment for the team seemed like a simple job compared to digging, but it was still very risky. No one. Chugong's face began to show his disappointment. He didn't know how long it would take to find a new way to carry luggage. It might take half a day, or even the whole day if he wasn't lucky. This was a problem. Then he looked at one of the hunters. Interesting. Unlike the others, this hunter was looking directly at Chugong. That hunter was Jinwoo. Chugong studied Jinwoo, and Jinwoo carefully looked at Chugong too. He seemed very clever for someone who usually protects the group. Usually people who protect others are the leaders. Chugong was thinner than most tanks. He was also very tall, so he looked more like a basketball player than someone who hunted monsters. Jinwoo finally looked away from Chugong. Phew. Chugong let out the breath he had been holding. What was that? Chugong was very tense and had forgotten to breathe. He didn't know why. Maybe he was just nervous because this was his first time leading a raid. He usually helped as a tank during raids, so today felt different for him. You really couldn't mess this up. Chugong leaned over and took several deep breaths, then stood up straight. There was some excitement among the people digging. He first thought they were worried about him, but he quickly understood. It wasn't about him at all. As he looked up, Chugong saw an arm raised toward the sky. It was the helper he had been waiting for. Chugong smiled. Everyone looked at Jinwoo as he walked forward. I'll do it. A really good helper volunteering for a dangerous place. Everyone started talking at once. You want to go when there are lots of strong monsters inside. What are you thinking, Sung? You're still young and have your whole life ahead of you. Don't risk your life for a little extra money. The team gathered around Jinwoo. Yoon-suk tried to explain things to Chugong. Oh my. That young man just started working yesterday, so he raised his hand because he didn't know what to do. What is his level? He is? Yoon-suk quickly looked at Jinwoo and spoke quietly. He is an E level, which is very low, so maybe you should choose someone else. It's too risky for him. Chugong thought carefully. That man is a low-level hunter. Chugong had looked at him before. He didn't feel any strong magic power, but something was different. He couldn't quite explain it, but he sensed a strong and concentrated energy from Jinwoo. I don't think he's a low-level hunter. Chugong didn't believe Jinwoo was one of the weakest hunters. Yoon-suk had no reason to lie and Chugong believed him. Also, it didn't really matter what rank the luggage carriers had. Their job was just to carry everyone's things. If someone carrying luggage was in trouble, it meant the team sent to fight had already failed. If a really strong hunter couldn't make it through the dangerous mission, then it didn't matter if the person carrying the supplies was only okay or not very strong. Everyone would still face a lot of danger. Once Chugong thought about it that way, he decided he didn't want to argue anymore and just get things done. They had waited long enough and the mission hadn't even begun. Chugong looked at Jinwoo. No. I will carry it. Is it too much weight? Chugong asked. Jinwoo shook his head. No, I am fine. The large backpack on Jinwoo's back held extra clothes, weapons and protective gear for the team going on the mission. It was large, but not very heavy because Jinwoo was very strong. It didn't seem like too much for him to handle. After checking to see if Jinwoo was okay, Chugong looked at the gate. Jinwoo turned his head to look at it too. A very large gate appeared in the air, almost as big as the day before. Maybe it was even a little bigger. But people said this gate had less magical power than yesterday's. The difficulty of going through the gate wasn't decided by how big it was, but by how much magic it had. That's why the second group of hunters was in charge of this one. Yes, the magic coming from this gate was much weaker than yesterday's. Jinwoo could tell. This was true as he stood ready to go through it. The group's check seemed right. But why did he feel uneasy? It was a strange worrying feeling, like the one he had before going through the red gate. It's probably nothing, he thought. Ki-hoon gave the signal. Let's go. The team waiting outside the gate began to enter. One by one, the hunters went into the dungeon. Jinwoo, who was watching carefully, followed them. You have entered the dungeon. Inside the dungeon looked normal. Jinwoo had been worried about a strange feeling he had earlier, but he breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the tunnels were much smaller than the dungeon from the day before. That was good. They hadn't been sent to another world, thankfully, but this group of hunters was strong enough to handle a difficult dungeon anyway. There were 11 hunters with an A rank and 6 with a B rank. In most hunter guilds these hunters would have been on the main team. Jinwoo laughed to himself. He wasn't even on that main team, so he didn't want to worry too much about it. Today and yesterday were actually days off for Jinwoo. He would just have more things to look at today. It wasn't necessary to get upset about being in a less popular group. He decided to calm down. You don't need to be so worried. A woman who looked about 27 and was walking next to Jinwoo started talking to him. She likely wanted to cheer him up after he looked worried. He saw our leader and all the other hunters here are really good at what they do. Except for me, the healer said with a kind smile. Jinwoo hadn't been scared, but he felt much better seeing her friendly face. It was like letting out a breath he had been holding. Jinwoo almost laughed and smiled back at her. Oh, okay. The healer seemed happy with what happened. The fighters in front checked to make sure there were no magical creatures blocking the way, and then they signaled it was safe to go forward. Let's go. Jinwoo and the healer walked with the fighting group. They went carefully, watching for anything dangerous. If your things are too heavy, I can help you carry them. The healer kept looking at what Jinwoo was carrying. He quietly gave her the water he was holding. She quickly grabbed it back, trying not to drop it. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at her. I'm sorry. She bowed and apologized to everyone. After that she never offered to help Jinwoo again, and kept looking at him angrily. Jinwoo tried not to laugh and kept walking as if everything was normal. It had been a long time since he had felt amused inside a dangerous place. He knew that if he wasn't careful, something bad could happen very quickly. The places Jinwoo explored were really scary. He still felt nervous when he remembered how hard the upper levels of the demon's castle were. But today felt different. He was joining a raid as a helper, and that wasn't always a bad thing. Just then Jinwoo stopped walking. It took a moment before the other hunters in the group noticed the same thing. They're coming. Every hunter immediately got ready to fight, even before Ki-hoon told them what to do. It all happened very quickly. Jinwoo was really impressed. This is how skilled hunters work. They were much better than any group he had been with before. The healer, even though she wasn't very graceful, had a bright, clear light around her hands. I thought I probably wouldn't be needed here. Jinwoo felt both let down and a little bit happy about that. Just then they saw the magical creatures coming. Were they like animals? Maybe similar to dogs. Ki-hoon looked closely at them. They were running quickly toward the group. It was a group of magical creatures that looked like hyenas. They were about as big as regular cars. Ki-hoon was confused. Were those dungeon jackals? He knew for sure as they came closer. The magical creatures really were dungeon jackals. Ki-hoon lowered his shield and didn't bother getting ready to fight. He didn't need to challenge them first. One of the jackals jumped for his neck, but he quickly hit it with his shield. What? Cave jackals. The other soldiers relaxed, looking confused. Soon, the weak cries of the injured jackals filled the cave. They defeated the creatures quickly. Over 10 jackals quickly fell to the ground, now lifeless. The hunters brushed themselves off, looking confused. What happened? It was over before I could even begin a spell. Why were jackals here in this dangerous dungeon? That's a good question. Did the people in charge make another mistake? Their voices got louder as they talked. Speaking quietly was always important in dungeons, but everyone forgot about that when they saw the dungeon jackals. Ki-hoon rubbed his head as he looked at the bodies. Why were these beasts here? They were only supposed to appear in stronger areas. Ki-hoon looked around, surprised and confused. Everyone else looked the same except for Jinwoo. He was carefully looking at the dead jackals. These weren't normal monsters. Jinwoo narrowed his eyes. The fur around the jackal's necks was flat. It looked like they had been tied up. That meant something inside was controlling them. They must be smart, magical creatures. Jinwoo remembered the ice slayers from the battle at the Red Gate. It was well known that magical beasts who could think were hard to handle. No matter what kind they were, maybe his feeling was right. This didn't look good. What are you looking at so closely? The healer also narrowed their eyes at the jackals. Quiet. Jinwoo held up one finger. Thump, 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 thump. He could hear marching sounds getting closer. The biggest problem was still coming. Jinwoo stood up straight, ready for what was next. The other hunters realized something was terribly wrong. Oh no, get ready, Cahoon managed to say. Finally, the shapes of their enemies slowly appeared on the other side of the dark cave. The hunters' eyes widened. High orcs, what are high orcs doing here? Well-trained high orc warriors stood in a line. There were 22 of them in total. That many strong orcs would have been a difficult fight. But these orc warriors were even tougher. Someone whispered, something isn't right. It was very strange for weaker creatures to attack them, right before they were going to fight powerful magical beasts, creatures already known to be strong. The orcs raised their spears at the hunters. The hunters and orcs were equally skilled. Jinwoo moved to a corner to get a better position. He wanted to watch what was happening and find a good moment to help. The healer clearly thought differently. Please go hide, so you don't get hurt. Her words bothered Jinwoo. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath to calm himself down. The battle started soon after. Grah. Cahoon used his special ability to try to get the big orcs to come toward him. But it didn't work very well. It wasn't long before the monsters and the hunter fighters were all fighting. Trhunk, 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 blood splashed around, and people shouted in pain. Gah. Finally, the mage hunters sent their spells toward the orcs. Boom, kaboom. Those hit by the glowing, exploding arrows lost their heads. But nothing happened after the first attack. Magic worked well against the orcs. But it took too long to cast the spells. Arg. The orcs were better at fighting up close. Heal, heal, hurry. More and more hunters were getting hurt, keeping the healers very busy. Heal. The female healer from earlier was also running around, helping the hunters who had fallen. I'm coming, I'm on my way. She quickly knelt beside a hunter who was hurting badly after losing an arm, and began to speak a special chant. Woo! With a bright flash of light, the arm slowly began to grow back. The light came from a healing spell that only very skilled healers could perform. While she was carefully working on the injury, a large shadow fell over them. She looked up. A tall orc she thought was defeated was swinging an axe and looked very tired. Oh no, she was very scared when she saw him. Sadly, there wasn't anyone around to help. As the orc lifted his axe to strike, she moved her body to protect the person she was helping instead of running away. No. She waited for something bad to happen, but nothing did. Each second felt very long. She looked up at the orc. She couldn't believe her eyes. Ugh, the orc was floating in the air, shaking. How? What was happening? She couldn't stop looking. Then a cracking sound. The orc's head suddenly flew off its body, along with part of its back, as if someone had pulled it off with great force. Whoosh! The healer stared at the orc's remains on the ground. Huh? The magic beast's head stayed floating in the air. Oh no, I got some blood on me. Jinwoo frowned, and then threw the orc head he was holding. Crash! The head hit another orc, knocking it to the ground. The orc's neck was twisted oddly, and it didn't look like it would be able to stand up again. That made two defeated. Jinwoo quickly moved to a new location. He had turned on a special ability called stealth mode. Because of this, the tall orcs and the other hunters couldn't find him. Because he didn't want anyone to think he was getting in the way of another group's hunt, Jinwoo was looking for the right moment to help. Then he remembered his stealth skill. With that skill, he could move around without being noticed, and without getting into trouble. Jinwoo smiled. Should I begin? Just then Jinwoo saw the leader of the hunting group, Cahoon, fighting hard against 3 large orcs. Jinwoo ran quickly toward Cahoon. He wasn't very far from the large container, but he wasn't right next to it either. It didn't take much effort to jump forward and land in front of the tall orcs. As soon as he landed, he had a thought. He could fight these orcs if he wanted to, but that would make it pointless to use his ability to hide. Cahoon and the others were the best hunters in the guild, and their guild was the #1 in Korea. Except for that somewhat clumsy healer, the other hunters would quickly guess stealth was responsible if they saw large orcs being ripped apart by something they couldn't see. Being found out wasn't the problem, but Jinwoo didn't want to create any difficulties the day before he received his evaluation results. He thought about waiting until the attack completely failed before helping, but then the healers would be hurt too much. Look at the female healer, she almost died. Jinwoo's eyes shone with determination. He would help as much as he could without anyone noticing. That was the plan he decided on. He didn't think for very long. Almost without realizing it, he brought his two special weapons, Barca's dagger and Night Killer, into his hands. When did I even call for these? He couldn't help but smile. His heart had been racing, but holding the weapons again made him feel calm and steady. It was good. No one could see his face when stealth activated. He didn't want people to think he was strange, laughing while humans and orcs fought each other. Especially the leader of the team, Jinwoo didn't think Tinutuan would be happy if he saw Jinwoo smiling, while Kinut working hard to fight off 3 orcs. Let's finish these enemies first. Jinwoo started fighting. He quickly knelt and cut the tendon at the back of one of the orc's leg. Grassen, the large orc warrior shouted in pain. Jinwoo was just beginning. He smoothly stabbed the side of the second orc with his dagger and cut the third orc in the back of the knee. Grassen. The excitement of the battle didn't stop them from feeling the pain, and the orcs' muscles tightened from the surprising attacks on their weak spots. That was all it took. Kasun quickly attacked the orcs, hitting them with all his strength. The sound of metal clashing filled the air. Kasunliak, huff huff, huff huff. Kasun looked up. His sword had gone right through the orc's heart. Kasunliaf trembled, and its eyes rolled back. As it fell to the ground, Kasun made a fist and cheered. Yes, I can do this. As Kasun defeated the other 2 orcs around him, Jinwoo kept fighting. Kasunliaf. It seemed like time slowed down for everyone else. But Jinwoo moved quickly and easily, and no one noticed him, as he began to change the battle. Chundayef. Everywhere Jinwoo went, he wounded the orcs, leaving cuts both big and small. Kasunliaf. As soon as the large orcs were surprised by a sudden injury, they knew they were defeated. The skilled hunters quickly started their attack. It was surprisingly easy. What was happening? Could they really defeat so many strong orcs without anyone getting hurt? The group of hunters was both puzzled and excited. They had expected some of them to be injured, but everyone was fighting better than they thought possible. A hunter hit a strong orc with a heavy club, breaking its head. That was when Jinwoo got some good news. A message appeared saying he had leveled up. Wow, all his hard work had paid off. His level had gone up. It seemed he still earned points, even if he didn't completely defeat the enemies himself. He had only finished off 2 of them, but he helped with the defeat of 13 orcs. He didn't think he would get stronger, so leveling up was a great surprise. Jinwoo was very excited, which helped him move even faster. A quick sound and a shaking noise. A loud roar followed. The fight was almost over because of Jinwoo. Jinwoo stopped a short distance away. He put his knives away and looked around. That should be everything. It was finishing up, and he had earned a new level. Jinwoo looked down at himself. Nearly 20 large orc bodies were scattered around. I could have become even stronger if I had defeated them all. But unfortunately the hunters had paid a lot of money for permission to hunt here, so this area belonged to them. This was about all I could handle. That's okay. Happy with how things went, Jinwoo found a hidden spot, like a place to store luggage. Roar. The last orc cried out when it realized it was trapped by the hunters. The loud sounds of the monster filled the cave. Jinwoo turned off his hiding skill as he watched the big orc fall to the ground. The hunters were breathing hard. They looked around everywhere, but not one orc was left. Did we win? Is it over now? Just a minute. Before they could cheer, Ki-hoon quickly checked everyone to see if anyone was hurt. Anyone get hurt? Ka-hoon asked quickly. It wasn't common for hunters to be seriously injured when they had skilled healers with them. If a hunter was still alive, the healers could usually fix them up. So Ka-hoon wasn't asking about injuries, he wanted to know if anyone had died. The healer looked at him, and shook her head. There were some injuries, but thankfully no one died, and the hunters who were hurt had just been treated. Now the special team cheered. We won. We did it. Yeah. The hunters happily hugged each other. Jinwoo watched them celebrate, folding his arms and looking pleased. Were the big orcs really that strong? He didn't think so. He hadn't fought in a difficult dungeon before, so he didn't quite understand why everyone was so excited. Jinwoo didn't know that hunters choosing which dungeons to explore also thought about how much magical energy was inside. Powerful creatures called high orcs were very strong, even in difficult dungeons. They were considered a big challenge for even experienced hunters. That they had beaten almost 20 strong orc fighters was amazing. Jinwoo, who really helped him win, didn't realize how incredible this was, as he quietly celebrated with the team. Wait a minute. Among the excited people, a female healer was walking toward Kihyun, with a worried expression.